Hello? Yeah. Hi, hello. Thanks for coming to this session. It's the last one today, so I appreciate your time. This is going to be a very, let's say, interactive session. So what I ask you to do is, if any of these people sitting next to me says something interesting and you want to hear more about that, just put your hand up, right? And then this person can just talk a bit more about what they are saying, really. So hi, welcome. My name is Itxaso Arake. I'm the head of business development for startups and venture capital here in Germany, also Switzerland and Austria, what it's called DACH. And I have a couple of really interesting people sitting next to me. So instead of me talking to you, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, really.
Hi, I'm Uli. I think it's fair to say I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm founder of a company called SMACC, which is accounts payable automation and workflow software with a lot of automation built in, software as a service. I'm also founder of a deep learning company called Hypatos. Hypatos automates the processing of semi-structured documents in back office processes. Sounds super dry, but it's a very interesting space. So we automate all those repetitive tasks that no one really wants to do in back offices. And I'm also founder of a brewery, craft beer brewery here in Berlin. It's called Berliner Berg, highly recommended. And I have a professional service background, used to work for McKinsey for many years and for Rocket Internet. And in 2012, I actually sort of changed sites and became an entrepreneur.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lawrence Norman, the head of business development for a startup called Heed, based in New York City, in Herzliya, Israel. You will learn a lot more about us tomorrow in the keynote at 10 a.m., so be there. I joined Heed after being at Adidas for 21 years, so I've had some good experience in the enterprise side, but also the startup side, and I look forward to talking about the differences today. Thank you.
Okay, Jakob Huhn. At Contentful, I'm the director of sales for EMEA and Asia, and running a team here out of Berlin who help our customers to modernize the way how content flows. So if you are really sick of your content management system, definitely we can help.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Alexa from SAP. I think I represent the enterprise side here. I'm responsible for SAP's early stage startup acceleration programs in Europe and Israel. What we do basically is share our 400,000 plus customers with the startups to help them scale. And I'm going to plug here quickly at the beginning while everybody's still paying attention.
Please go ahead.
We have applications open for our next Berlin program, so just go to sap.io and look for the Berlin Foundry if you're interested, after I have finished talking still, to apply for one of our programs.
You should put your hand up, right, and then to ask a bit more about that. So as you know, this panel is about startups working with enterprises. And then I would like to start with a very broad question and then see what they have to say, really. So I might start with you, Alexa, to know what's the main interest, and try to be as honest and as specific as you can, of enterprises to work with startups. What's the main, let's say, interest?
So I think we have two main interests. One is the disruptive technology that we often find startups working on, at the very cutting edge of innovation. So that's, of course, interesting. Sometimes it's the way data is used, the way new business models are created through the use of data, for example, new different workflows that we can also learn from and that customers are asking from. But for SAP, for example, well, we're in one area, but maybe not in a niche, what we call a niche, but the startup is very, very innovative. So we then collaborate to provide that innovation to our customers. And I think from an enterprise employee perspective, it's also good to just get the dynamic that happens in a startup, the passion, the impatience sometimes to get moving, helps kind of reset sometimes the more stable structures of an enterprise.
I can see that. And yourself, what would you say that's the main interest of startups to work with enterprises? Apart from, obviously, big contracts or anything you would like to say?
We're operating a land and expand model, so it's not about the big contract, but it's really about helping customers to start changing the way they work. So startups typically come with the idea of the old corporate enterprise world is something we have to disrupt, and we do. Obviously, that requires on both sides a willingness to be disrupted, as well as the willingness to embrace innovation. And depending on where you end up in the enterprise, working with a customer, disruption has different paces. But we are seeing that many customers, many brands build new digital products, build new digital ideas, and actually their hardcore product, whether it's a car or whether it's a kitchen device, is very quite replaceable. So they are needing the enterprise need that startup innovation to actually build these modern brands, which is essentially building software. And that's something enterprises haven't been very good at in the past. If you think like enterprise software release cycles, 6 years in advance, you exactly know what feature going to be launched, and that is not what the modern pace of building brands, committing customers, building market share is about, and it's something we see customers reaching out to us where we can help.
Do you think German enterprises have realized that that's something that they should move towards too?
Looking at my lead queue every morning, I think they have very well realized that. So we're seeing a lot of inbound activity from companies who come to us and say, hey, we've heard that a company like Contentful made it on the New York Times top 50 next unicorn list, and hey, what are you doing? How can you help us? Why are you there? And can we learn from you what you're doing? And that's not a one-way road, it's typically a two-way road. So we are learning on the way what it means to work with a company which is 1,000 times bigger than we are, and a procurement team which is probably the size of our company. That's sometimes a very interesting conversation, but we've never had a situation where a customer really dropped off by not getting to conclusion on a procurement.
Yeah. I mean, working in a startup is crazy. Right? Coming from the old world, when at Adidas, with 60,000 employees, and now coming to Heed, which has a lot less than 60,000 employees, take the 1,000 off, it's crazy. But what you want from an enterprise or a big company is you want them to allow you to be crazy. We want to enter a new space. For example, like Heed is entering a space where live sports meets social media meets gaming. It doesn't really exist yet, and we're trying to create this. So on the enterprise side, we want a really reliable partner. The more reliable partner we have, in which is playing a significant role for us, allows us to be creative because our focus is on creating a great product, generating a user base, getting their feedback, and creating an even better product. So the more reliable a partner, the better. I bring up AWS as one example on the service side. We're not the biggest partner that AWS has, but they treat us like we are, and that's very important for us because we need emails returned, we need phone calls returned, and we need a partner by our side, and they do an excellent job.
I think there's nothing wrong with big ticket sales, right, to the big Bs. No, I think from my perspective, and I mean, people are not asking us to do exciting things. They want us to save them money in the end. And there's a lot more money to save in bigger organizations than in small ones. Because if you solve a problem or a task that is done 50% of the time of an employee of a small company, it's not as big as an impact that you can have than saving a problem that 100 people in a shared service center have, right? So just the magnitude of problem, if you will, that you can solve with those big companies is quite interesting. That's one thing. And the other thing, if you're in the data business in general, it's always good to have a lot of data. And big companies turn out to have a lot of data, and it's a great opportunity to automate with this type of data that they have sitting in their companies. So they give much more opportunity to actually solve big problems and save them a lot of money.
Sure. I just want to check a little bit with the audience. How many of you work for a startup? Could you put your hands up? Okay. And how many of you work for, let's say, like an SME enterprise-ish? Okay, it's quite even, really, to be honest. So just going to go right into that. Could you, starting with you, Alexa, I would like to start with the negative part of the relationship between startups and enterprises, and then things that we can improve. So if you were to mention 2 challenges, like the main ones that you receive recurring, which ones would those be?
So when startups work with enterprises?
Correct. Like two main challenges.
So I think you touched on it a little bit in the processes are slightly different. And they're that way because companies need to protect themselves when they get to a certain size. So for example, the procurement process is a longer process. And if you're a startup that needs the cash, you need to make that sale, and it just drags on for months and months. And it's not even on the enterprise side, not necessarily the fault of the procurement person. It's just the way the processes are, and then all these forms need to be filled out, and then you've come to the end and you realize that all these other forms still need to be filled out. And it's all there for a good reason. And it works between enterprises because they're all aware and they have the cash to keep them afloat. So I think there's just awareness that things take longer. That I think that's one challenge. I think the sales cycles take longer. You need to get alignment between many different stakeholders to make a buying decision. So that, of course, makes it very challenging and takes sometimes longer. And I think the other one is just finding the right person, right? So you spoke about Adidas with 60,000 employees. You have companies, AWS has probably many as well. Your 100,000 employees is finding the right person for you to talk to, and then getting in front of that person and actually making them listen to what you're going to help them. So why don't you listen? And that's often a challenge that we try to help them with when we work with the startups. It's if you work with an innovation team or an acceleration team, then they're incentivized to help you find the right person, right? Or if it's even a CVC in some cases. And so, it's a good way to try and get around that. But it is definitely a challenge just to navigate sometimes the enterprises and find that right person for you to talk to.
Absolutely, I can see that. From your side, from the other side of the bench?
I think, first of all, we are on the same bench, very much with the enterprises. We're very often with our champions on exactly the same bench. They want to get it done, all right? They're super innovative people, enterprises. We're working, for example, with Autoscout, right? We're 5.7 billion, somebody bid out for them a couple of weeks ago. That's an enterprise. And they're going obviously through processes, and we have very strong champions. So building these championships internally in your customer and helping them move 800 websites to Contentful in like a month's time is a massive achievement, which helps them to make the case internally. And sometimes as well find ways around it, or find shortcuts for you, find things which just make the process so much easier. And Amazon has a very nice leadership principle, which is actually disagree and commit. You're not going to change the way how a large automotive is going to procure. It's not going to happen. But if you accept that already, you are one step ahead and just say, okay, let's work through that. Let my champion help you do it. And then many of these things actually work in a very pragmatic way. They require forms, yes, they require all of these unpleasant conversations sometimes, but they finally end in something which is mutually beneficial. And we've seen that in the past. Partnering with our customers got us a couple of things which are really valuable. So we partnered with ARD on their new Mediathek, and in exchange, because we helped them to get through their process, they were willing to provide us a case study, which for us at the company is quite a huge thing. So partnering is really the key. It's not about enemies. Everybody has a job in a company. We just have to acknowledge that there's different ways to work with them.
Just to connect these two comments, do you think it's about maybe finding the right incentive structures, understanding what kind of incentives other people have in the company, and then trying to address those?
Absolutely. If you're clear that your procurement person has to get 5% discount because that's what they measured on, then building your price 5% discount. It's a very simple thing, right? And the more and the better you understand what a legal or compliance or security team or vendor assessment team is measured on, the better you can work with them. And it's easier, it's shortened that conversation of everybody has to show what they need. If you already know, because your champion told you, can be very smooth and can be very fast.
I'm going to ask you then, and the main two challenges you faced actually in your current or even in your previous role. So up to you.
Okay, in my current role, so we're a B2C platform, and when I think about the big or enterprise or big partners that we work with, it could be something from an AWS, but can also be a big sports partner, a sports league. You'll see tomorrow that we're partners with Borussia Dortmund, for example. And one of the challenges when we're discussing our ideas with a big company is that they may have more to lose than we do to really get out and be progressive. So what we try to do is that we try to find partners that want to be first movers, that want to take a little bit of risk, that have innovative in their brand values, and they actually live that day to day. Every brand will say they're innovative, but not every brand is. So we are really looking to be with these partners because when you're entering a new space, there's going to be a lot of risk. And we pick our partners carefully, and in order to overcome those challenges, we have to really sharpen our message and be precise and come in and be ready to be creative. So that's how we overcome it.
Two biggest challenge. Challenge number one, IT procurement. IT procurement. So we just have a new client relationship, and I think I spent probably 10 times an hour on the phone with IT procurement to get it up and running. And you have to put up with stuff where you have in the TNCs service levels that require you to be able to have an error, class 1 error resolved within 24 hours in Brazil. We are a 40-people team based in Berlin. I mean, there's no way that we can do this. And this is something you need to figure out and discuss, and there's very little flexibility in those TNCs that they require. So this is tricky, right? This is really complicated if you do enterprise sales. And the challenge number two, and this is a strange thing to say if we talk AWS, it's cloud readiness. Because you sell a cloud-based service to an enterprise, and the person you're selling to, the CFO, obviously says, yes, we are cloud ready, that's awesome, we want to adapt some cloud services and yours makes a ton of sense, let's do it. But then if you dig into actually implementing it, running a POC, you quickly discover that they are not quite yet cloud ready. And you have to deal with a on-prem delivery of your cloud native services. So I think this is the two biggest challenge. If IT procurement, which is made for enterprise to enterprise business, and cloud readiness in general, if you're a cloud service.
But I think that's where the champion that Jacob was talking about can help. If you can get a champion, even in a procurement process, who can give you the tips of how to overcome some of the hurdles that can make it easier.
Actually, what we've learned, we've about 8 months ago, we started our partner journey with AWS, and we achieved the well-architected framework. We are an advanced technology partner, one of the very few in the SMACC segment in EMEA, as long as the partner finder tells me. And we're working on the competencies thing. Actually, that's something which helps us overcome a lot of these conversations, where companies just say, okay, you are up on that board, okay, that ticks many boxes, or at least it opens a different level of conversation. That's a learning we had. And in a few cases, we actually got AWS's help on customers where we asked them and said, hey, this IT procurement team, this IT security team does absolutely not want to move. Their understanding of cloud is, I'm going to have it in my data center on a hypervisor in my basement. And it's reality, that exists. But we had many situations where then AWS could actually bring in the right people and help us resolve this stuck situation between, do we walk away or do we do a dirty deal, which is not really something we want to do and which we don't do. And typically we after involving these external vouching partners, it really helped us to build our credibility and the trust of the companies and said, okay, great, let's do it.
Yes. Moving over, I mean, I think all of us want to know about a success case. So I just would like to ask you to mention just one, the biggest success case that comes to your mind when it comes to working with startups or working with enterprises, right? One, how do you achieve that? And any learnings from us or for us?
So I think the biggest German success case for SAP currently in Germany is a company called Celonis in Munich, so based in Munich. Just the partnership between the startup and the corporate, in this case, or the enterprise, which was SAP, has really helped that company scale over the time. It's just by opening the doors that we can open more easily maybe than a startup can who isn't that established. So that's, I'd say, my case.
Do you have any in Berlin? Or
Sorry?
Do you have any case in Berlin?
We have a lot of smaller cases that
Sure.
are maybe not as well known, but a similar case where it's really helping, especially when we look at the early stage startups.
Yeah.
The way we can help them most is really scale their business through the customer introductions. So we have many cases of companies that, and it's for me always a long-term relationship too. So we do accelerator programs that are 3 months. So we're in residence 3 months. But it's a continuous relationship. We had a company, for example, GTM Hub, that was here in 2017. They've actually opened, they're from Bulgaria, they opened then sales offices in Berlin, and we're currently in a deal together with them here in Germany, 2 years later. So it's a relationship that continues to grow as time progresses. So.
Sounds great. What about the New York Times named hypergrowth startup, Contentful?
Actually, we have a very good relationship with our investors, which really helps. It's not on the day-to-day thing. It's not like Sapphire, one of our R&D investors, as well as Salesforce, another R&D investor, or Balderton, are really great partners in our journey. It doesn't mean that we're going to call the investors in every single deal and say, hey, please help. But these people have typically a really, really good network. So we have had situations where we said, okay, this deal is really, really stuck in a large enterprise customer. Investor, please help. Who do you know there? Who can you call? Who can you call a favor in just to unblock this small thing? It's not like if something is really black and white, but typically never things are really black and white, so there's always kind of a way of doing it or getting a different vision into the account, and we had quite numerous opportunities to leverage this network of our investors to get things done.
Okay. But any special success case that you would highlight?
None which
To
I
mention
can
one?
highlight as a naming, but it's a very large automotive brand building very fancy cars in Germany.
That's ambiguous enough. Sounds good.
Can I say one from my past life and current life? Okay. So past life at Adidas, I think the best one is Parlay for the Oceans. That Adidas decided to become a more sustainable company and made 1 million shoes out of plastic, which is a really cool collaboration that they did. And here at HEED, I honestly think that AWS, because for multiple reasons, and it's not because of the fact that we completely rely on AWS for all the technology side, but also what AWS has given to us is that they are being so progressive and open and flexible. And I'll give you an example from yesterday. And our CEO is here. She'll be on stage tomorrow. She's going to laugh. But so we came here last night, had a rehearsal, and we're doing something completely different than any presentation at AWS. We have a live performance. It's a lot of fun. It shows the demo of the app. It's really cool. But the first thing AWS did when they saw this presentation, like, wait a sec, this is completely different than anything that we're used to at AWS. They took a deep breath and said, okay, let's go for it. And I think that throughout our entire partnership with AWS, they are willing to take these risks and do these crazy ideas, and that's why they become a really close partner of ours. Thank you, guys.
It's a second example, I think.
The Adidas one is Parlay, and AWS is this one.
You have great investors too, so you might want to mention
we
yours.
have great investors as well. But what's more beneficial, or what turns into actually our main customer acquisition channel, is working with big companies, consulting companies, that benefit from what we bring in. And at the same time, we benefit from the access that we get, because as Alexa said, I mean, the most important thing in enterprise sales is getting to talk to the right people. And obviously, if you work with a big consultancy, big four auditing firm, they know exactly who you should be talking to because they have those relationships. And it's much harder for us or for me to talk my way up to the right person. And what I find, and this is why it works so well, is that we bring things in that make a ton of sense for those distribution partners as well, because we bring in cool technology and we bring this startup thing that everyone is interested in, and we open up a new topic that they can bring to their stakeholders in the companies that they can talk about. So they are always looking for something new and innovative, new technologies. And this works extremely well because, I mean, doing deep learning obviously is a big topic. And if you are a McKinsey partner or a Deloitte partner, this is always something that you can bring to the CFO, and that's something that is interesting to talk about. And this works extremely well for us. So I would say this is sort of the most beneficial partnership things that we do.
So through consulting partners. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Getting access.
Sure. Before I open this to the audience to get your questions, I would like to have a more high-level view of the German market, really, and to ask you about what do you expect or what would you like to see in Germany, especially in this, let's say, B2B segment in startups, coming from the startup world to work with enterprises?
So I think we see a good mix of B2B and B2C startups, especially if we look here in the Berlin ecosystem, but then also in Munich, for example. So from the B2B side, I think there's a great opportunity to build on the long engineering tradition that we also have in Germany. So we are seeing a lot of really interesting startups in the digital supply chain space, for example, in the manufacturing space, AI in general. I think there's no point in calling it out anymore because everything has AI in it in some form. But also in the CRM space. We're seeing some very cool uses of technology that really we think will revolutionize the way corporates, enterprises will do their marketing. If you look at the segment of one and how to really target that one person's needs, I think the use of technology and the use of data that most companies these days actually have is going to be more and more important to really get that competitive advantage. So I think it's a broad mix between the manufacturing, supply chain side, where we're also seeing some very interesting companies, but then also on the marketing side of how to really target individuals using the information that is available today that wasn't the case maybe even 5 years ago.
How do you see that yourself? How do you see the B2B space evolving specifically in Germany?
We have a couple of partners who are in the B2B space, so we are relying both on technology partners who complement our solution, as well as on integration partners such as agency to help customers to adopt it or to discover it. We're seeing in Germany quite a couple of very interesting companies which are complementary to us, which provide that personalization aspect, who provide the front-end aspect, or who provide us just services to manage different tools, different microservices in one portfolio. So very interesting emerging partnerships out of that side. And I always wish there would be more, because obviously more successful startups means more successful customers ultimately.
So about a couple months ago, we were asked to speak at an accelerator here in Berlin. And I want to talk about Berlin more than Germany, because I think the focus is really on this city. That the accelerator is called LEAD. It was founded by the relatives of the Dassler family of Adidas, coincidentally. And we went there to speak, and we were able to present in front of a host of young startup companies here in Berlin, and learned then that a new startup company happens in Berlin every 20 minutes, which is amazing. But these startup companies, during this presentation, they were all focused on big data and how this can be applied to sports. And these are all sports people with a sports technology background, and we're getting the sense in sport, and especially with leagues, that some of the greatest sports leagues in the world have so much data, but they're not able to apply this data to reach the next generation consumer. They're seeing aging fan bases, and they need to say, how can we reach a Generation Z consumer that's no longer watching a full match anymore? And that's what Heed's premise is. So I think the trend in B2B is going to be how to use this data, one, to go to B2C, but also where the fans are, whether they're gaming, whether they're in esports. There's so many opportunities, and I heard that, at least in that meeting with Lead Accelerator, that a lot of the startups are focused in that area, which is interesting.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question, yeah. Were you listening? I believe so. Absolutely. I was wondering what your take is on the development of the B2B segment, and specifically in Germany. How do you see this evolving?
B2B, software as a service
Correct.
technology.
Yes.
So from SMACC is rather mid-market SME, Hypertos clearly enterprise. So there's, I think, a big difference, smaller Bs and big Bs when it comes to software as a service B2B. So in Germany specifically, in the mid-market segment, it picks up. It picks up tremendously. I mean, just 2 years ago, it was pretty tough to sell a software as a service solution to a mid-market Mittelständler in Germany, almost impossible. By now, it's much easier. They are much more open to applying software as a service solutions. They like the idea. They understand the benefits of it. So this has become much easier. If I look at enterprise, and this is what I said when it comes to big challenges that we have in our go-to-market, enterprise in Germany is not quite yet cloud ready. It's quite difficult to really have software as a service solutions that run in a public cloud, AWS, what have you, and really get them through IT procurement. And I mean, we deliver a lot of our cloud technology in the end on-premise and do a lot of tricks to actually make that work. And I think it's going to take a couple of more years to really see big impact of software as a service B2B. So this is just my everyday experience.
It's going to take a bit more time, you say?
It's going to take, I mean, obviously everyone wants to go cloud. Everyone understands that cloud is a thing and that it has a lot of benefits, but big enterprise companies move very slowly. And my feeling also from having, I mean, we work with companies outside of Germany as well. Yeah. Increasingly, and what I see is that a company in the US, an enterprise in the US, is much quicker and much more open to adopt cloud technology than a company here in Germany, because there's so much regulatory things that German big companies tend to worry about that makes it difficult to actually get something up and running that runs primarily in the cloud.
Interesting. So from the people in the room that work for enterprises, I would like to have that statement challenged somehow, which leads me pretty much to Q&A, right? I would like to open this and have some time to get your questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, just put your hands up and I'll bring you the mic, really. Your name, maybe, and what you do?
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm a DevOps at a fintech startup in Hamburg, Exporo. And I'm interested in the relation or what the enterprise can bring, how to train the staff, like how prepared is the staff in the startup now and for tomorrow, since they also have to unlearn stuff, how they got there. If you understand my question? All of you. Like
so let me try to interpret what your question is.
Yes.
So do you mean what, as a startup, you have to do to train your staff in order to be enterprise ready with regard to delivering your solution to an enterprise? Or do you mean what does it take for an enterprise to work with new technology?
I'd say both. Let's say there's a career path in every enterprise and there's fun at every startup, at least they pretend to. And how do you keep the staff motivated because they learn and not they go because they don't learn, they just have to deliver?
So I understand what you mean.
Thank you.
So no, you're quite right. So if you work with an enterprise business in Germany, it's not, it gets professional somehow, right? I mean, you end up going to a client wearing a suit, which is something that a lot of the people working at SMACC or Hypertos never did before in their lives, right? So you have to dress up nicely to go to a client because this is what is expected from IT procurement at least. And there needs to be some change in culture. You have to become much more serious in how you work with your clients because this is what they expect. But interestingly enough, they also expect this cool startup vibe that you have as a startup that they want to bring into their company. So you have to find a good balance of being still cool and hip, but also very serious, reliable, and a little bit like the SAP consultants would look like that come into the enterprise.
Thank you.
Maybe two ends on my side. One key thing is what I only can consider. We're distributing some swag to customers, and people, super serious VPs of technology, 20 years in that company, come to us and say, hey, can you get me that swag? And we're like, okay, fair enough, all right. It's not yet another cup, it's something which they find cool and which they want to be seen with, they want to see this kind of, put that out there. The other thing is what we're seeing that traditional enterprises have a lot of training needs, a lot of structure needs, helping them to structure how their teams work. And we have addressed that in building a customer success team very, very early. So we are training every single customer we work with on an enterprise level. Plus we're using the customer success team to scale that knowledge out to our partners to deliver on our behalf, because we can't be everywhere and we can't onboard X number of new clients every month or every quarter. So that's why the scale mechanism for knowledge is really, really important. And good documentation. If you don't have that, you're done.
Can I think it's a similar question, but just the difference between an enterprise and startup on the culture side is glaring to me. And I think when you work for a startup, you have to be very humble. You have to realize that hours are going to be long, it's going to be frustrating, it's going to be hard, you're going to make mistakes, it's going to repeat every single day. That's number one. Once you get past that, then you realize that you're probably not good at everything. Because when you assemble this, you get the right founders, you assemble an executive team, but you don't have enough employees to do what you need to get done. So you're going to be lacking in certain areas, and that's where the humility comes in, that we really lack in this area. We need to get after this. And that's tough to do in some cultures, to admit when you can't do everything. But in a startup culture, and we're lucky that we have, I feel that culture, that we identify what we're missing, whether it's on the creative side or whether it's back office, whatever it is, and we reach out for help. Because if you don't do that at the early stages, you're in a lot of trouble.
My name is Gerhard Fröhlich. I'm working for Raiffeisen Bank International in Austria, in Vienna. You know us. One question, as a startup, how much do you generate out of these partnership programs with various companies? Is this an investment you do and you get something really back, or is it kind of, you put a lot of effort in, but you get kind of not so much out of it as you may expect? Because what I see, you have to invest a lot of time, presentations and stuff like that.
So getting at the question right, what do we get out of a partnership with AWS?
With those, like from Alexa, those partnership programs with enterprises. So that you pitch in kind of acceleration programs, you are getting selected as a partner.
Corporate VCs. We get, so from our learning, when we had our round D funding, that was a massive buzz, and we were able to see a massive tick in our engagement. So contact forms, people reaching out to us. Just for the name, you're suddenly somewhere if some big name invests in you. That's one thing. But on the other thing, it increases credibility in every single conversation we have. We have something called the NASCAR slide. So every company has these NASCAR slides. You have all of your customer logos you're super proud of, your partners, how many employees you have, how many offices, and your investors. And that is usually one of the longest talking points. So just that credibility and that trust these companies, corporate investors put in you is priceless, absolutely priceless.
I don't know. I think I'm a bit more skeptical, right? It really depends. I mean, Ralf, I'm talking about banks, right? I mean, we tried co-selling partnerships with Deutsche Bank, Sparkasse. We invested a lot of money and resources into training bank consultants to sell our products, and nothing really came ever out of those efforts. But on the other side, I mean, there's a couple of cool partnerships that really had impact also on the go-to-market side. I think there's a lot of factors that you need to consider and that need to play together in order to make it happen. I mean, in the end, if you have a reselling partnership that brings you this one big 6-figure enterprise client, all is great, right? And if you work with a bank and just sell to small and medium size and get 100 client relationships out that are not even close to this one big partnership, it's super hard to say. I think what I'm saying is, I think you don't have a lot of choice. You need to try everything in order to get business and succeed, and you end up investing in a lot of partnerships that don't bring in a lot of business. But then on the other side, you have partnerships that work extremely well, and there's no way how you can know beforehand. So you have to do it anyways.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, my name is Anna. I work in business development at Contentful. Thank you so much for your discussion. I took a lot of notes. My question is as follows. You've mentioned that finding the right stakeholder, the right person in an enterprise is a challenge. And what would be your advice? Like, what is the right channel to connect to the right stakeholders for startups? Is it LinkedIn, events, network? What would be your piece of advice?
Well, I can say from my side, and then the startups can say what has worked from them. But what we find is exactly through innovation hubs. And for Berlin, for example, you have many from Daimler to Deutsche Bahn to SAP, Lufthansa, etc. Or through acceleration programs, or through the corporate VCs. Because all of these people are incentivized to help the collaboration between startups and corporates. And so they will be more willing to take a look. Let's see, how can we help? How can this help us potentially? And then help you navigate into the organization, because they are normally the ones who have had a few years in the corporation and who have the networks that they can then open to you. That would be my advice from the enterprise side, but I'm interested to see what the startups say, what's helped.
Make them find you. So just get out there and go into every accelerator program and sit on every panel and stage and talk about what you do. And if the right person is in the audience or gets to see your pitch that sees value in what you do, you're going to get approached by this person, and then you have your meaningful relationship. But it's really just sticking your head out there. I've never had any good return from sort of outbound outreach using LinkedIn. I mean, we even wrote a long letter, handwritten letter to the CEO of Deutsche Bahn to get into a conversation. This actually worked out, but didn't turn into business. But this is not really effective. I think the best channel, if you want to do effective enterprise sales, is speak up, stick your head out, and let people find you.
Thank you.
Just saw your hand first. Name and what do you do?
Hello, I'm Maggie. I'm a software engineer, and my previous experience was in a tech startup. And the biggest challenge that we had wasn't the introduction to the enterprise world to actually sell the technology, but the biggest challenge was to shorten the actual time that it took to actually close a deal. So in the enterprise, for some of them, it took 1 year, and depending on the management changes or organization changes or priorities or strategies, we used to make for the same enterprise 10 demos or 10 POCs, which didn't transfer into actual deals. So my question is, do you actually think from your experience that partnership with corporates can actually help with the shortcut in all the steps and actually go to the decision makers?
You can't shortcut. There's no shortcut to experience as well. There's no compression algorithm in that. You have to make these experiences yourself. However, good preparation, good sales methodology is really important. As a person I'm talking to, really somebody who is a stakeholder? Is he really power to buy? Is he an influencer? Or is he somebody who is just keen on your technology and understanding what you do? Right? That's something when I look into many deals, is my key question to my team is like, do we actually know if that person has the power and the authority to make a decision? That's one of the learnings. And you can turn circles and circles and circles in every big company just by doing demos to people who are not the right people, who are not the stakeholders, who are not connected. And sometimes it's at least in the German sales culture, we often have the fear of asking the question, are you the person who's going to make the decision, or can you bring me in touch with the person who has a budget? But it's so essential, especially you're a startup, you need to get cash flow running. Then don't be shy, ask the question, and it's okay sometimes to walk away. If you're not getting anywhere, walk away. If your technology is as good, keep nurturing, but don't try to hang on or try to make a deal out of a deal which was never a deal.
I was hoping you had an answer to that, like it was a solution.
Sorry.
There's no solution, man, come on.
A great solution, sales skills.
I agree. No, I agree with him 100%, and it's a great question. We would love to be able to make things quicker and to sign deals faster. We always talk about this, but I think the challenge is to every single sales pitch you make, you need to learn from the experience, and you need to shorten your message. We started off at the beginning with 100 slides, and it went to 50 slides, and 20, then 10, then a quick demo. You've got to keep learning and growing from every single piece of feedback that you get, because there really isn't, I agree with you 100%, there's no shortcut in the process, but learning and growing from every single experience is very important.
I have one actionable advice. Don't do anything for free. No free POCs, no free workshops, everyone paid for. Because if there's no willingness to pay you for a workshop, then there's not going to be any business. And if you don't get paid for a POC, they don't take the POC seriously enough. Always get paid for the stuff you do. This is the only advice that I have.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Peter. I work for a small startup that does some very special stuff.
You do special stuff? That's
It's
what you do?
special stuff because there is not many other companies doing the same thing. So still, the problem that we face is that big enterprises that would like to use our product, they don't trust us because we are too small. So one of the questions is, how do you see this to gain this kind of trust? And sometimes they demand even people to be dedicated to them. So we would have to hire like 3 more people that would only do the communication with them.
So you need to come into an SAP acceleration program.
We are.
Because, okay, good. Because that's what basically because corporates that do these kind of programs, they vet the startups, and so the association with a larger company that has that reputation, hopefully, or we see it with our startups, makes it easier then to go and talk to a Bayer-Stoff or to a L'Oreal, for example, because then there's more trust. So they have been working with this company, and so we can trust them more than if you came without any references.
I think there's, sorry for flogging again the AWS Partner Program, but for us it has been a game changer last year. So we've won a couple of RFPs on points on the basically beauty competition section, which is the second part of an RFP. You have the mandatory things, you have to tick the boxes, no things you can do about it. But the second piece is like, hey, whatever else can you provide to make us convinced that you are a great solution? So for us, that helped a lot with a couple of clients being in the partner program. The second thing I really learned is talk to your customers. Make them references. If you already have a couple of customers, we are regularly fostering introduction calls or reference calls between our customers. And we actually openly offer that, where we match up VPs, one is a customer, one is a prospect, to talk, to come to a meeting. Sometimes it's enough to organize a dinner. It's some investment, but typically that really, really pays off, because that person going to walk out and is like, oh my God, I've not only heard that this startup has a cool thing, which they're doing, but I've heard this from somebody who is in my industry, who is in the same seniority level, or who has to share another good story how they're actually using that technology. So feel free to really empower your customers and ask your champions to do these favors for you. And I'm pretty sure they will. Most of these people want to be seen as innovators in their peer group. And so go out there and awesome.
So I agree, Alexa and Jakob are correct. Big names, big companies that endorse you and client reference calls also help. But there's also one actionable advice. Companies, customers do not ever trust in your company. They trust in you. So the thing is, if you are the founder or the sales manager that is owning this relationship, people must trust you, that you actually deliver what you are promising. And this is, in the end, how you're going to manage this. I mean, they must trust you as a person. I think this is much more important than any reference or big logo on your website. My learning.
Thanks.
Last one question. Anyone? Yeah. 360. Your name and what you do, please.
Hello, I'm Fabian. I'm a founder in the formation phase. And now I'm in the point where we are discussing how we will take advantages of partnerships in the future. And one big question is how do you see the partnerships in between acceleration and on the other side, the thing that there is the cake, they're cutting more and more, the more partnerships you're going on. So you get my question?
No, we don't.
Okay, so when you, we're looking how to grow, how to finance us, how to go to a partnership, and when you're going to the acceleration programs, so then I don't know if every acceleration program is that, but they take a part of your company.
The equity, you mean?
Yeah.
They take part of your equity for an acceleration program?
Yeah.
Yeah, not all of them do. So for example, we're a non-equity acceleration program. Some of them do, and I think you just need to weigh the pros and cons of giving away part of your equity for the introductions that you will get through such a program. Or if you don't want that, then look for others that are non-equity. But there are non-equity programs.
Okay. So do you have experience with this, and how do you can say something about the advantages and advances?
I did a bunch of acceleration programs, never for equity. Don't believe it's worthwhile. So see, I mean, if you want to be successful, you have to hustle, right? You have to do everything that you can in order to advance your business. And if an acceleration program gives you access to clients, gives you access to capital, you should try it out. The only thing is, don't rely on the acceleration program to change your business, right? I mean, you have to hustle. And I've met founders that did 10 different acceleration programs, one after the other. Just find out what works for you. But don't think that if you get into a good acceleration program, if it's for equity or not, that this is, and then everything is solved, right? And you're going to be successful. It's hard work, and you have to work very hard on making an acceleration program work for you. Just try it out. If you like it, try it out. Do as many as you can. Do whatever it takes. Yeah?
Okay, thank you very much.
On that positive note, please take the chance to talk to these wonderful people. Pitch to Alexa as well, if you want to. And thank you for coming. Just talk to us and approach us. Cheers.